Hey everybody, thanks for joining me on another video. Today we have what's likely going to be a multi-part series. We have a Yardworks riding mower basket case. This is the way it was brought to me. Customer couldn't get it running. Box of parts. All the goodies in there. Half the engine's in there. Top end anyways. This is where we're at. Intake manifold's off. Fuel pump's hanging there. First things first, I'm going to get the hood off of here, get it out of the way. I'm going to pull the plugs. Actually, I'll just put my spark testers on first. I'll check for spark, see what happens, and go from there. We might end up with a pressure test. We're going to give this thing a once over. Pretty sure both the spindle bearings, the spindles are bad, both of them. They got a lot of movement. The blades are toast. The customer gave me a couple of blades to put on it, but I'm not sure if they're the right ones. The ones he brought me are a lot bigger than what was on there. So, alright, let me get some stuff organized here, get some tools out, get you in a stand. We'll dive in. Alright, here's where we're at. I did messed around a little bit with the safety switches, but the safety switch on the clutch pedal wasn't working, so it wasn't even cranking for me. The battery's only got 10 volts, it's dead, so I got a booster on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just have a turn of the key there and crank it, see if I got spark. So if you watch here, actually so I got a spark tester here, and I got another one right here, just in frame. I've got the lights off in the garage, but let's see if we got some spark. Oh, or also it's got a fuel pump, so we're going to check to see if it's got fuel pumping. I saw it. It's sparking. Did you see it? And we got fuel trickling into the coffee cup there, so ain't the best color. It's a little yellow instead of clear, but it's gas. It doesn't smell bad. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the plugs and I'll do a compression test to make sure that that's okay. Let me get my compression tester out. I'll get the camera fired back up. Alright guys, so it's the next day, and I'll pull the rocker cover off and we're going to have a look at check those valves, see if they need to be adjusted. Customer's complaint was he couldn't get it to run right. Or, you know what, I don't know. He said it won't run. So, he took the intake and carburetor and everything apart. I'm going to go back into that eventually, but before I try and fire it, I want to check and set these valves when it's cold. You got to do it when it's cold. So, we got a rag underneath the rocker cover here just in case some oil comes out of this cover. I know the fuel line that goes from the pump to the carburetor is hardened up. It's crusty, so it's retaining a shape if you squeeze it. So I'm going to replace that. And I know that the line from the filter to the pump, like between the tank and the pump, I know that line's got a hole in it because it's leaking. So we're going to end up replacing both those lines too. Both the spindles on this deck are bad, so that needs new ones. Let's get a little persuasion maybe. I'm gonna get something in behind there and pry on it. Okay. That's on there pretty good. Come on now. I'm not sure if this has a gasket or if it's all silicone. I was going to get some silicone anyways, but come on. I don't think it's silicone. Not a lot of places to get prying action on it. Yeah, bend on the cover here. I'm gonna have to. I'll straighten that out before I put it back on. Looks like it's all silicone. So let me fight with that. I'll get it off. Come back in a sec. Alright, so that decided to behave. I should mention before I get too much further that I did a compression test on it. Got about 110 pounds each cylinder, so we know the compression's okay. So we're gonna check these valves. Now, some engines you're supposed to set at the exact top dead center of the compression stroke. Some, I believe it's Briggs, says you need to go. The piston needs to travel 6 millimeters down in the bore or something. Anyways, you don't have to do anything specific like that. To check valves, if you just spin the motor over, turn it until one of the valves opens all the way. That one's open all the way. This one will be loose. Doesn't matter which one it is. If this is the intake, that's the exhaust. Some engines, the intake is a tighter spec than the exhaust. This engine, both of them happen to be 4,000 to 6,000 for each. So, intake is loose. There's our 4. There's our 6. Nice drag. Perfect. Okay, spin the motor over until this one goes all the way down. Intake is all the way open, which means this one is closed. It's that simple. There's our 4. It's loose. 6. Loose. I'm not sure if I want to tighten that one or not. Let's see what it's actually reading. Exhaust valves wear tighter, and intakes usually wear looser. As they wear, this will get looser, and as these wear, they'll get tighter. So spec is 6. Let's try a 9 in there. Nope. 7. 8. 7th thou. Yeah, I suppose I could just give her a little snug. So we're going to loosen the jam nut. Give the center bolt a little tighten. Because these usually wear tighter, I'm going to set it to the maximum spec, which is 6 thou. I find it. There it is. Typically what I'll do is I'll set the intake to the minimum spec and set the exhaust to the maximum spec. Seems to give it longevity. Okay, we got nice drag on that. We need a Torx. This one? Yep. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold that, not that one, I'm going to hold the center bolt while I tighten the nut. You don't want that adjustment to turn anymore. Okay. And things move when you tighten them up, so always double check. There, nice drag. Nice drag on the 6th thou. Perfect. And it was all silicone. It was factory. There's no gasket in there. So I'll buzz this down, clean it up. We're going to hit it with some brake clean. I'm going to straighten out the valve rocker cover, which didn't get mangled too bad. I just put a screwdriver here and a screwdriver here and give it a pull, and it twisted right out. So these seem to be okay. I'm going to do the other side off camera. You don't need to watch it again. And we'll get that resealed. And then I think it's time to put the intake and the carburetor back on. So we'll get that figured out and get back on the camera here in a sec. Alright, we got the other side done. Both valve covers are back on. Silicone back on. The other side was uneventful. Small little tweak. Had to take about a thou clearance out of the intake valve. Now we're just going to make sure our coil air gaps are set. So this is the magnet of the flywheel. What you want to do is you want to center the magnet in the coil. Loosen these 2 bolts. They're not very tight. They don't have to be. And you pull the magnet, pull the coil away from the flywheel. Set your business card in there. Any business card. Gives you right in the ballpark where you should be. Now, let the coil move forward. Snug it up. Not stupid tight. These are very small bolts. Just roll it out. There you go. Coil gap set. Perfect. Already did the other side. Now, I think we'll put the intake back on there. I'm going to pull the bowl off the carburetor and see what's going on in there, but for now, I'm going to start assembling the front end of this. Here's that intake manifold that goes here. Carburetor in behind. And the linkage has been removed, so I got to figure that out. We'll get the camera back on in a minute. Alright, so that's all done. Got the intake back on. Carburetor was uneventful. Took it apart. There was no dirt and crap in it. There was one O-ring that was swollen up in there near the fuel shutoff solenoid. So I just replaced the O-ring. This line we're going to keep. This line I replaced. It had a hole up here. Now this is on the suction side of the pump. So if it's got a hole here, it's going to suck air in the hole instead of fuel and pump it in the carburetor. So that could have been an issue. Yeah. Alright. I don't want to run it too long. Well, I got to see if it will run. I don't want to run it too long because the covers aren't on. The covers direct the air from the fan down over the cylinder head fins and cool it. So I don't want to run them too long without that cooling fan shroud on there. So get you in the stand and we'll hit the key and see what happens. Okay. Alright. Let's see. I did prime the carb bowl. I put some fuel in it. About as long as I want to run it without the shrouds on it, but hey, that's a success. It runs. Huh. Alright. I know this mower needs a lot of other stuff, but I got to go over it and check it all out. It does need deck spindles and probably a drive belt, but alright, I'll get the shrouds back on there and let it run a bit, and then we can let it drop the oil and change it because it's black. This is a pressure fed 20 horse Briggs, so it's got an oil filter on the side. We'll change that out too. And yeah. Okay, I'm gonna get the shrouds on there and we'll come back. Yep, it was due for an oil change. Pretty black. These quick oil drain spouts, man, they are such a pain in the butt. You just see in the background there's a hex. So beyond the yellow, there's a hex part here. This hex threads into the block, then they always loosen off and then you get an oil leak. But anyway, I ran it, got the shrouds on it, I ran it until it was nice and warm. I could feel the oil filter was warm. Now it's time to change oil. That's pretty thin. So we're going to let that drain out, and we'll go to the other side and get the oil filter spun off and get a new one on there. And while I'm on this side, I'm going to tighten up that hex so it doesn't want to loosen off on us. Those little quick change spouts, you turn them like an eighth of a turn to the left and then pull straight out. Well, what happens was, before it even went that eighth of a turn to the notch, it actually started unthreading from the block. So it's common on these. I took the linkage off here for easier access. You don't have to, but I'd tighten it up anyways because the square part is actually loose. That's loose here on the spindle, and the tie rod is loose, so that'll take a lot of slop out of the steering. Oh, and these little quick fittings, they're not long enough. So if you open it up, you got to put a piece of hose on it. If you just open it up without hose, it'll just dribble all over the frame. So there is a little barb on the end of it. It's supposed to have you're supposed to put a hose on it, but I mean, make the thing an inch longer and you won't even need a hose. Inch and a half. As soon as you pop that open, it will drop straight down. So I don't know what they were thinking. There are far better designs than that. All right, so I'm not going to bore you watching oil drain, so we'll come back when we got something else to show. Alright, so we got the oil changed, the oil filters changed. Got a nice shiny new yellow one on there. Put 10W30 in it. That's what it prescribes for use in the summer. Above, I think, 50 degrees. 10W30. That's what's in there. That'll work for us. I've got the deck off. It wasn't too bad to get the deck off. Some of them are a real animal to get off. This one's not too bad. A couple of quick release pins in the back. There's our quick release pins for the rear. So usually right around this area here, put a 2x4 flat on the ground, lower the deck all the way down, and that usually releases the tension on those pins. Pop those two pins off. Little clip here. This little clip comes out of the cable and allows you to unhook the cable from the deck. That's the blade actuating cable. Now we can get a good look at this deck. Spindles are bad. They're wobbly. Up and down. They growl. And these idlers, that's pretty noisy. Gotta hold the belt off of the... Can't do it with one hand. Gotta hold the belt off away from the pulley. Give it a spin. They're pretty noisy. And this pulley and this arm pivots on this bolt here. And this, when you pull your cable, this actuates the it's on the front here. So when you pull the cable, this arm turns this way and tightens up the belt to engage your deck. This is not working. That pivot's seized. I'm gonna have to take all this apart, clean it all up, get rid of the rust, lubricate it. I'm gonna put some anti-seize underneath everything here. These pulleys, I'm either gonna replace the bearing, or I'm not sure if I can replace the bearing or not. I might have to replace the whole pulley. We'll have to get prices anyways. This is a customer's job. So the deck belt's not crazy worn, but if we're going to take it all off and take it all apart, I'm going to end up putting a new one on it. It is rounded a little bit here. It's not cracked or anything, so, but if we're going to put the time and effort into doing everything else, we might as well rebuild the whole thing. So I'm going to get it outside. I'm going to pressure wash it, get all the goop and crap out from underneath it. That way we can see our spindle bearings. They're spindle bolts. They bolt in from underneath. and call the customer with an estimate. We're at that point now. So, all right, hang on. All right, so a bunch of stuff has gone on since I last had the camera on. Took the deck outside. I didn't pressure wash it yet, but I did strip it. Both the spindles were toast. The idler pulleys are noisy. I have to replace these. I can't do anything with the bearings. I have to replace the whole pulley. This arm here was C-solid. It wasn't moving at all. So that bolt has a shouldered washer on it, and that, let's see if we get you a shot. So the stacked up rust in between the washer and the arm and the deck was preventing it from moving. So that'll work nice now. I will have to order those 2 idlers. That ain't right. I'll have to fix that. I think one of them is bent. We'll straighten it out. But anyways, I did call the customer, gave him an estimate on how much it was going to be to get all this back in line, and it is running. Does need a tune-up. Did the oil change? Yep, already had that on the last one. But anyways, gave him the estimate, and he decided that he doesn't want to put the money into the machine. So I offered to purchase it off him. I'll make it a resale project. He named his price. I accepted, and I now own it. So I'm going to rebuild the deck. So I jumped at my supplier on their website. I'm looking for these spindles because these are toast, and they list them. I can't tell you what I pay, but anyways, you can get them for $60 to $75, somewhere in that area. Just let me get the camera set here. This is what you hear it, a growl. Anyways, so what I did was I took one apart. I drove all the pieces out, the shaft, the spacer, drove the bushings out, got a part number off, drove the bearings out, got a part number off the bearings, and I went to the same supplier, and lo and behold, they have them in stock. So I ordered 4 bearings. So I'm going to rebuild these spindles instead of replacing them. The housings aren't broken or cracked. There's no bolts broken off in them, so I'm just going to rebuild them. And it's at my pricing, it's about a 1/10 of the cost. 10% of the cost to do the bearings as opposed to replace the spindles. But it's my own machine. So if you were to take it to a shop and they had to do all this, then the pricing is going to be a lot more in line with, you know, replacing bearings versus replacing the spindles, because labor is labor. Well, anyways, I'm going to get it in the stand and we'll drive this thing apart and we'll show you how that's done. Alright, so I'm going to use my impact gun. I'm going to pull this nut off of here. I've already got it loose. Nut is off. Oh, easy now. Get away from me. The other pulley didn't come off so easy. Set that off to the side. See if that sleeve will come off. Nope, we'll drive it out. I'm going to put a little penetrating oil in there. My favorite, Seafoam Deep Creep. Again, not sponsored, but I like it. It works good. WD-40 has its place, and its place is not in my shop as a penetrating oil. It's good as a cleaner, it's good as a solvent. I'm just letting that run down in these splines here, so you can get that sleeve to come off. Just tilt the. There we go. Just turn the monitor on the camera so I can see it, so I can see what you're seeing. All right, the vise is not deep enough for me to set this in there, so I'm going to set it on its side here. There's a couple of ways you could do this. You can put the nut back on and beat on it with a hammer, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a center punch right in the center here. Just a not a center punch, just a pin punch. And I'm going to drive that through. Hammer. Punch. Did I put it away? No, I didn't put it away, but I don't know where it is. So, this is concave here, so the punch will actually center in there. So I'm going to drive the shaft right through everything. This one's coming out a lot easier than the last one. Last one I beat on it pretty good. And the lower bearing actually came out with it. There we go, the whole thing just came out. So that spacer goes under the pulley. There's the shaft with the lower bearing. Doesn't actually feel too bad. Give that a wipe here. I think the spacer might be a little stuck on the shaft. It is. So when the spindle sits like this, the shaft is in there like this. Lower bearing, spacer, upper bearing, which is still in the housing, and then the pulley, and then nope, then the spacer, then the pulley, then the nut. So we'll deal with that in a second. I'm going to flip this over, and we're going to get that bearing out of the top. That was real crusty. That's the crusty one. So, spin the vise in so we can support all four of these legs. I'm going to get it in as close as I can. I don't want to risk breaking any of these legs off of here. I got a bigger punch. It's actually a drive pin for a rear differential. You've been used as a punch for many years now, as a drift. So inside there I'm going from this side to this side, back and forth. I'm not beating on this, just tapping. I don't want to crack the housing or anything. It's moving. Bearings out. There we go. Yeah, you can actually see in there. They don't put anywhere near enough grease on these things. Let me dig another one out of the scrap here. I'll show you something. I think Steve from Steve Small Engine Repair, Steve Small Engine Shop on YouTube, he did a dirty little secrets video, I think it was. Something about John Deere mowers anyways. So John Deere's got a similar spindle. They got a grease fitting on them, and you can stick a grease gun on there and pump it up and grease the inside of the spindle. But what happens is you've got your upper bearing here, sits up here, the lower bearing sits down in here, and when you fill that grease cavity up, all it does is it fills the inside of the spindle up. Well, you think, well, that's great because it's going to lubricate my bearings, but they're a double sealed bearing. There's a seal on this side, which that was the grass side, like the outside. This side was facing the spindle inside, and there's a seal on it. So there's no grease getting into this bearing. All you're doing is filling that cavity full of grease. So when I get new bearings, when I buy bearings, I pop a seal off, and just grab just a pick tool here, and I just gently grab the lip of the seal, just work it around, and it'll come right off. Careful, because you want this to seal up again. So you have two choices here. If you have a grease fitting in your spindle and your bearings failed and you're changing just bearings, you can take this seal off. Leave the top one, the one that's exposed to the outside. Leave one side on and take the inside off and drive that side into the spindle, where it's this way or on the other side. You can leave that off. That way when you grease it, the grease actually gets into those bearings. This is old clumpy grease. In any case, when I buy bearings, like for example these ones, when they come in, I'm going to pop a seal off one side and I'll grease it. I'll pack it full of grease. Full. And I'll put the seal cover back on, and then I'll pop the other side, pack that full, and then I'll drive them into the housings. I don't think I'm going to leave these ones exposed. This one doesn't have a grease fitting in it, so I'm not going to leave them exposed. I'll seal them back up, but I'm going to pack them full of grease, because if you take the seal off a brand new bearing, you'd swear that grease is crazy expensive and rare, because they don't like to put a lot in there. I pack them full. Grease is cheap. Anyways, that's that. I don't have any new bearings to put back in. I've got a mess in here. Oh, there's that the inner seal for the bearing that came out without the seal. The inner seal was in there. Just fell out. I don't have new bearings put in here yet. But we'll give this a wipe. Clean everything up. Scrub it. Get all that old cruddy grease out of there. Mess of junk. Get that garbage out. Oh, bumped you guys. And we'll wait for our bearings, and then we'll reassemble. I think in the meantime I am going to go pressure wash that deck. Got to order the idler pulleys too. Oh. Let's try and get that sleeve off of there. It might be just rusted to the shaft. A couple of taps will probably drive that out. We'll see. It's moving. There we go. It's just a little sticky. That's the inner spacer that goes between the upper and lower bearings. A little bit of penetrating oil in there. See if we can get this bearing to slide off easy. Maybe. Anyway, they're going to work at it. The shaft's got some rust on it, so I'll clean that rust off. That bearing will slide right off. Okay, so I got my bearings. They came in. The spindles are ready. I've cleaned off the shaft. Took a little bit of rust off there. And we can assemble these real nice and quick. I cleaned off one of the old bearings. I'm going to use that as a tool to install the new ones. So what we'll do is, first thing is we're going to grease these. So let's pop the seal off of here, and I'll show you what I was talking about earlier. Just gently, you don't want to wreck anything in there. You don't want to wreck the seal. That's a brand spanking new bearing. There's not much grease in there. Just a little bit. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some multi-purpose grease. Just going to fill that cavity up. Grease is cheap. Might as well put it in there. If I was keeping this mower, I would consider drilling a hole in that spindle housing and putting a grease fitting in there. And then I would leave one of the seals. I would leave one side off, and I would drive that to the inside of the spindle. That way, when we greased it, it would fill the cavity and fill the bearing. But this is a resale mower, so I'm gonna give it a better start than if it was just installed like a new spindle anyway. So this will be better than new. Just gently reinsert that seal, make sure it's in place. We're going to pop this side off. Get a little more in there. Doesn't hurt to have more grease in there. Okay, that's that one. We'll set that on the top of the spindle. I'm going to use this old bearing on top here so I'm not hitting on the new bearing. And just rock it in there. That's bottomed out. So that's good there. Let's get that flipped over. And we'll do the same thing here. Just grease this bearing real quick. Pack a bunch in there. Doesn't have to be really, right full, but I like to have more than they put in there anyways. Is that one? Just pop our seal back in. They come out real easy. These rubber seals, they're actually, it's a steel ring with rubber molded onto it. Let's get a little more on this side. Good enough. Put that seal back on there. Excellent. Okay. That bearing's ready to go in. I'll take some more of that grease and I'm just going to put it onto the shaft here. More of a corrosion barrier. Nothing moves on that shaft, so it's just a corrosion barrier. We'll take that and we'll just run our new bearing down it. We need our spacer. Okay. Grab a socket. And I'm just going to drive it down gently with a socket here. The shaft bottoms out in the vise, so I just got to turn it sideways a little bit here to let the shaft clear. Get that bearing all the way in there. That's that. This bearing's in place. Spacer and this pulley. Alright, so I'm just going to gently clamp that spindle on that 6-pointed star there, just to hold it for me. Not too crazy, I don't want to wreck anything down there. It's a tooth spindle, goes under the notches on the shaft. There's not many splines sticking through, it's just sticking out. There, that's nice and tight. Much better. Nice and quiet. That should be good. Well, that's that one done. I've already got the other one together. Same thing. Wonderful. Silent. Okay, I got a clear space in the shop here. I got to bring the deck back in. We'll get these spindles bolted on. I got a pair of blades that came with this tractor. I'm not sure if they're... Well, I know by part number they're not the right ones, but I don't know if they're going to fit or not, so we'll have to check that. So I'm going to reposition the camera here, and we'll get things going. Okay, so I got the spindle set in there. It just set down in from this end, from the top. The 4 bolts go in from the bottom. Got the belt rerouted. That side's all together. It's got the shield on it. The shield also contains these bars here. That's a belt guide, so they'll come around beside the pulley here. So when you disengage the blades, the belt doesn't fly off the pulley. So, and they're just held in with some small bolts. Some little guys. We'll get those in there. That's that. I did pressure wash the deck, and I buzzed it down real quick with a wire brush because it was a little scabby underneath all the dirt. I couldn't even tell until I got the dirt off. But it was a little scabby. It's not rotted through anywhere. So it's still solid. The metal is all good there. All the moving parts have been lubed, greased up, and so everything runs real nice. This was actually seized. It wasn't moving at all before. Now it is. I've taken those, taken the wheels off, the guide wheels on the ends here, taking them off and got some oil in there so they run nice now. This one was bent way out, so I just bent it back in, got a little bit of engine oil on the axles, so they spin real nice now. I'm going to flip that deck over, I'm going to stand it up, and we'll see how those blades are going to work on there. Like I said, they're the wrong ones by part number, but they might fit, so we'll try them out. If not, I got to order blades, but hang on a sec, we'll get that deck flipped over, and we'll see how the blades are. Alright, so I got the blades on there. These are much thicker and wider than the originals, like this width here, very wide compared to the originals. So I've got them on and tightened down. They seem to fit, not hitting anywhere. The brakes are on the back side of the pulley, so they're not spinning very free, but the edge of this blade doesn't hit the deck anywhere. But what I was more interested in is this. That right there. There's about 1/8 of an inch there. Eighth of an inch. I'm going to spin them this way. I don't want interference blades. Now typically, with the correct blades on this deck, you don't need to time them because they're non-interference. They won't hit. Yeah, we've got an 1/8 of an inch clearance. Nice clearance on the deck. I think it'll be okay. We'll use them up. Yeah, it's a little rusty, but it's not bad. While it's upside down like this, I'm going to take that opportunity and I'm going to oil spray it. Make sure it stays nice like that. So, next step, oil spray, and after that, we're going to put the deck back on the tractor. And then this one's just about done. I believe that tractor is going to be nice. Oh, I did a. Yeah, we should go over that. I took the body off, I took the hood off, and I put it on my workbench, my workmate, and I used a buffer with some compound, and I shined that paint up. So you can see some reflection in there. It's still got staining. I mean, it's a 9-year-old tractor. It's not perfect, but that's far better than it was. A little bit of, I put some paint on that grill. I took the headlight lens off and I polished that too. So it was quite yellow before and foggy, but now it's nice and clean and clear. Should dress it up nice. Looks pretty good. Alright, moving on. Oil spray, then install the deck. Well guys, that's it for this video. The tractor's ready to go. I've done a quick test of the blades, make sure the blades spin and everything and keeps running okay. Looks pretty good. Shiny deck. Oh, I think this one will be okay. Custom trailer hitch. Yeah, I think we'll be okay. Detailed the engine, make it look nice. Alright. Well, thanks for joining me guys on this video. Don't forget to click the like button. Subscribe if you haven't yet. And if you have subscribed, don't forget to click the bell icon to get notified when I upload new videos. Again, thanks for joining me. Till the next one, take care.